Welcome to our Living Stones podcast, where we gather to discuss all matters of faith and life as members of God's household. In a world that often leaves us feeling fragmented and disconnected, our hope is that Living Stones will help to further connect us as we pursue the Lord together. I'm your host, Siyoung, and today we'll be discussing the topic of eye for an eye, or turn the other cheek, or Christian ethics, based on Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 to 42. And with me, once again, I have Pastor Jacob and our brother Hwihu, our intern. Welcome.
I still have both of my eyes. Neither of my cheeks are red.
I'm missing 2 teeth, though. I got extracted.
What have you done?
You don't want to know.
Right.
Well, welcome, guys.
Welcome.
So we're back in our tough texts series, and we're going to be talking about this commonly referred to verse, but oftentimes misconstrued. And so it's short enough for me to read. And so let me go ahead and read the text in discussion here. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone will sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. And this is the end of the text. So, Hwihu, can you provide us with the context of where we are in the book of Matthew, and then perhaps the larger context and followed by the immediate context?
Yeah. Let me see. Try to make it entertaining for your boring drive.
Should we reenact it?
Yeah. You. And now left side of your car. Book of Gospel according to Matthew. Matthew is telling us about a king, a promised king now here, a Jewish guy. Surprise, surprise, he's not just king of Jews, but he's king of the world. And he's here to establish his kingdom. That's the gospel according to Matthew. And for you to be part of this kingdom, hear my words, my people, says Jesus, here's my constitution. Known as the Sermon on the Mount. That's chapter 5 till chapter 7. 5, 6, 7, 3 chapters. Jesus laying out his kingdom vision, his constitution, what kind of people belong to his kingdom. And if you belong to this kingdom and I am your king, then this is how you're supposed to live. And now we're in a section where Jesus is teaching his people that my people, in the face of evil, this is how you respond. Yeah.
And it begins with something that many of us probably have heard before, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So where's that coming from?
Hammurabi. Yes, that too.
There's a code of Hammurabi. That's what we would learn in history class.
Yeah, but Jesus here is referring to Mosaic law in Exodus.
Leviticus, Deuteronomy. PJ, did you have anything to add to that?
Or do you have anything to correct?
No, the Mosaic law, especially talking about eye for an eye, is law that prescribes fairness, not being lax of the crimes that are committed, but being fair, that the person would, quote unquote, serve the right time for the crime and not something that's extravagant or beyond what the person deserves. So we, in Deuteronomy 19 here, verse 20, 21, the rest shall hear and fear and shall never again commit any such evil among you. Your eye shall not pity, meaning don't look over the crimes that people have committed. It shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. So it's prescribing justice, fairness, refraining our desire for great retribution. We see in Genesis chapter 4 why laws like this was necessary, because we see Lamech, a descendant of Cain. He says to his 2 wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. And here he has killed a life for being struck, and right, that's making them pay a greater punishment than they ought to have paid. But we see commandments like this; it's calling for fairness.
Mhm. It's like setting some kind of boundary through a legal means, so that people aren't retaliating and punishing people out of proportion with the actual crime
Yeah,
committed.
and we see in humanity where this is our natural response. You do something to me, I gotta make sure something worse happens to you. And so we see conflicts like in the Middle East never ending because they feel the need for greater retribution. You did one thing to me, we're going to do two things against you. And then, of course, they're going to respond with three things and with greater weapon, greater power, greater destruction. And so when we don't follow God's wise laws, we see that humanity just continues in this endless cycle of warfare.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I guess it's God's way of curbing evil,
Mhm.
understanding the depravity of man. So, given that legal context from the Old Testament that Jesus is referencing, let me ask you guys, what makes this text tough? Right, this series, after all, is called Tough Text. So, our passage today, what makes this a challenging passage for us? Is there a controversy or some kind of misapplication, misuse? Can you guys explain?
Yeah, I think the question is, do Christians have the right to defend themselves, or should we always turn the other cheek and let ourselves get beaten? Uh, be complete pacifists where we are. What's the term that people say? Right, we're just doormats for
Mm.
people to walk on. Like, is that what Christians are supposed to be, or is there any right for believers to stand on their ground and defend themselves when they're being attacked?
Mm.
And I think this is why passages like this are used, um, against self-defense or any sort of protection. Just Christian, just take it.
Mm.
That's what you're supposed to do. Just take it.
Mm.
Yeah, the challenge is definitely in how are we supposed to respond to evil, specifically when those evil is it's being done against on us against us. Um, yeah, are we supposed to take it, or are we supposed to stand up for ourselves?
Mm.
Especially in kind of American context, a country that was never conquered or beaten by anyone outside force, um, or especially 21st century moderners who have never suffered great deal of injustices. Don't really know how these passages can really challenge someone. To what degree am I supposed to stand up for myself or just submit to evil? Because it clearly says in English, "Do not resist evil." So that's where the challenge is. Yeah.
So if I were to ask this question for clarification, so Jesus is referring to the law, the Old Testament law that was in force and enacted for the people. So is this talking about some kind of legal means? Like, are we talking law here? How are we supposed to, like, what's in view here when Jesus is trying to apply that Old Testament law, and kind of fulfilling it in some way? So are we looking at this as a legal means, or like what's the context here?
Um, I think, yeah, generally, the Sermon on the Mount is for people who um wants to and who should belong to Jesus' kingdom,
Hmm.
which Jesus' kingdom citizens live in this fallen world under civic government. So it's a interesting social nuance overlap with spiritual kind of a social dynamic. That if you have a relationship with Jesus the King, the way you relate to others now takes on new like kind of a priority, legal priority. Uh, like God's kingdom legality precedes your obligation to or social dynamics that you're so used to of this world. Um, I know that sounded complicated, complicated, and what are you saying? What I'm saying basically is I think this is for Christians to live out their ordinary lives,
Mhm.
how to
Yeah.
follow Jesus in this world. Yeah.
Yeah, as we see what Jesus does through the sermon, he's correcting the way people believed and followed the law. We see the formula of you have heard, but I say to you. And Jesus isn't undoing the Mosaic law. He's not telling people like this is what you have heard, but I'm giving you a new commandment now, right? Forget the old. He's not doing that, but he's saying, I've seen how you follow this. You're following it because this is how you've heard it. But I'm telling you, this is how you're really supposed to follow the laws, the commandments that were given to you. And so when it comes to adultery, it's not just about actual sexual intercourse, but it's about even looking at someone lustfully. And so in this text here in Matthew 5, you've heard that you're always supposed to pay back someone for the wrong that they have done to you. But really, when you look at what that law is saying is, there's certain things where as believers, we're not supposed to always give back the way that people have given to us, right? It's when people have really offended you, stolen from you, right? Who have injured you, and taken things from you, right? That there is a right for you to demand for fairness and justice, but that doesn't apply to every single occasion and every single instance. And that's why Jesus specifically talks about being slapped, people demanding your cloak, forcing you to walk a mile. And so he's correcting people so that they have of the right understanding based on the kingdom ethics of how to faithfully obey the commandments that were passed down to God's people.
Mm.
Yeah, precisely. 'Cause Jesus, one kind of goal of Jesus here is to show them that you think you're doing so well, you belong to the nation of Israel, which is God's chosen nation, so you're good, but you're actually not. It's not just what this law prohibits me from doing, but what does the law require of me doing. So Jesus is actually subverting, flipping their understanding of what it means to God's people. So to show them y'all need a savior, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a command to do away with the laws of restitution, but it's actually giving us an personal ethic to live by within the kingdom to which we're called to. And so, like, can you guys work through the text just a little bit? So, how are we supposed to make sense of this? Like, what does it look like to resist? Like, what does that even mean to not resist the one who is evil in the ESV translation? And what are we to make sense? How are we to make sense of the four examples that Jesus gives?
I'm trying to look up NLT real quick, my favorite translation, New Living Translation, highly recommend. It's regular modern English, so you will find it to be very good for your devotional life. Sorry, let me just look it up. What in NLT, see what it says.
Well, as we look at passages while he was looking up, we can try to see how Jesus lived and see if there are occasions of how he responded when he was attacked, when he was slapped. Does this simply mean whenever someone slaps you, you're supposed to just take it and turn the other cheek? Well, we see in the Gospel of John, as he's being tried before the crucifixion, he was asked a question by the high priest and concerning his disciples and his teaching. And then Jesus gave his response, like, you've seen me do these things in public. Why is it that you are now bringing charges against me? Like, you have all this opportunity after what you've seen me do publicly. And then one of the officers comes and slaps him, to which Jesus replies, right? He didn't say, okay, here's the other cheek now. But he says, if what I said is wrong, bear witness about the wrong. But if what I said is right, why do you strike me? And so we know that this text in Matthew 5 is not simply just take it, Christians, right? Whatever people do, if they strike you, just take it. Because Jesus didn't do that. He was struck during the trial and he said, why'd you do that? If did I say anything that was wrong? Right? He didn't simply offer the other cheek. But at the same time, when he was deriled, when he was cursed, He did not respond with curses. He did not bring other people dishonor when they were trying to attempt to dishonor him, but he was silent like a lamb to the slaughter. So when we see how Jesus lived, I think that's where we can have a better understanding of how to follow passages like Matthew 5. It's not that we simply take the abuse. We should stand and question any sort of injustice that's happening either to us or people around us. But when we are being dishonored for the name of Christ, we are not to respond with such retaliation saying, oh, you make fun of me, I'm going to make fun of you. You try to smear my name. Well, I'm going to do whatever I can to smear your name now. But rather, we're saying, well, this is actually the cost of following Jesus. People are going to curse me. They're going to hate me. Even the people whom I love, whether they be my friends or family members, will want to disown me or separate themselves from me. But I must not abandon Christ, and I must not dishonor my fellow neighbors, my friends, and family, even if they were to treat me this way, because they are still image bearers. There's the hope of salvation to those who don't believe. And so I must not retaliate in the ways that they have acted toward me. So we've seen that's what Christ has done. And so as followers of Jesus, we are to follow those steps.
Yeah, that's helpful. Hugh, did you find it?
Yeah. I found it. It doesn't help here for my for one auto share because it's pretty much saying the same thing as ESV. But you see, but you never know unless you look it up.
Sure.
But what I wanted to say is that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That clause, the moment Israelites hear that, this is now the topic of retaliation, revenge. You know what I mean? Like once that clause or phrase or word is dropped, everyone knows in the room, oh, we're going to talk about that. Like that's just what it does. So now everybody's expectation as they're listening to Jesus' teaching is he's now on the topic of retaliation, of revenge. And as faithful Israelites, what they know, what they believe is that a real avenger, a proper avenger is not themselves, but is God.
Not Iron Man, not Spider-Man.
You know what's crazy is I was thinking those things. I'm ashamed to say that.
Wow.
I wanted to say it so bad.
Yeah. So that's their theology. So they know, and they know that this law was given to prevent from over retaliation. So now within this context, now Jesus, do not resist the one who is evil, and it's followed by but if anyone slaps you in the right cheek, so maybe the person who's slapping you is the evil person. But he says, do not resist the one who is evil, but turn him the other cheek. Meaning, this can be understood as, then how do I retaliate properly? If this is the context of retaliation, and the word, especially the word but, is signaling you, oh, then how am I supposed to act as proper God's kingdom citizen when someone is being evil against me? It's a kingdom way of retaliation. And like what Pastor Jacob mentioned about Jesus' trial story, Jesus as an example, he lived this kingdom ethic out when he was on earth, and he didn't take it and didn't say anything and just let the trial move on. No. He spoke against injustice in a way that's properly fitting to the kingdom that he's king of, which is you speak truth. So here, some scholars suggest really helpful kind of a nuance here. If your right cheek is being slapped in a cultural context where everybody's right-handed, suggest that that's a backhanded slap. That's something that PJ does to me all the time. In our intern reviews.
Not all the time.
Okay, like 70% of the time.
Deserve it.
Why is their sermon so long? Oh no. Yeah. And a backhanded slap is someone dishonoring you, to the point where some archaeologists and some scholars suggest, to the point within this Greco-Roman society, there's a law where it actually allows you to publicly backhand slap or dishonor someone else. It is a shame and honor kind of a driven culture. So these kind of things kind of make sense to them. If you dishonor me, I have all the right to dishonor you. But for God's kingdom citizens, how do you retaliate? Is actually let them slap you, not backhanded, but what's the other word of that? What's the proper handed? I don't know. Just a real slap, which now then is not a dishonoring type of slap, but it's a full force slap, real slap, as an equal. So what you're doing here is that when someone dishonors you, you're actually creating an opportunity in a way you behave that you help them to realize that you are actually an equal human being. Now you have to treat me as an equal human being instead of dishonoring me like as if I'm a lower class. You don't have the right to do that. And we are very familiar with this kind of ethic being played out by Martin Luther King Jr., the way he stood up against injustices. He stood up and showed them that, African Americans are also has the same dignity as a, equal human being. It's that type of kingdom retaliation method that you show them that you're not supposed to treat me like this, just like Jesus. You're not supposed to dishonor me with false accusation. You got to speak truth.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to speak truth, and you have to actually press forward with let the in a way that truth will be revealed. So here, do not resist the evil one. I mean, that's not the right translation. Do not resist the one who is evil. Within the context of retaliation, then, means do not retaliate the one who did evil against you in the same way how they did the evil against you. No. The way you're supposed to retaliate is actually by showing them you're equal as them, as the same human being. So, so it's non-violent. Let the truth come out. Trust that God will do the avenging work and bring the truth forth. Type of kind of work here.
Yeah. So this is not a response to an abuse, but this is a response to someone trying to dishonor you, belittle you, and make you appear less human in front of other people.
Yeah, because he says if it was about against evil, violence, it will say, but if anyone punches you on the right cheek, or if anyone cuts your right arm, but here is obviously one of the weakest form of violent slap. So, but yeah. So.
I will say that is a little bit different than what we've traditionally understood as do not resist. I think rather than non-violent resistance, I think my understanding had been that it's no resistance, more so no resistance. It's like let them. But I think that is an interesting take, and I think when you piece it together contextually in that way, I could see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, sorry. Then just to push a little bit more to make my case stronger within the proper literary context, Jesus is the final prophet, and throughout Old Testament prophets, number one biggest issue he had with the nation of Israel is injustices against the oppressed, the hunger, the needy, the orphans, and the widows. So Israel gets judged by God for not taking care of people who needs help. So this is kind of a prophetic wise teacher teaching them what God really requires of them type of context here. Sorry, I just wanted to weigh in my
and that makes sense to me as well. I guess just more so for our listeners, I think there have been different views where I think some have taken this to mean acceptance of insult, and just taking the insult because you are expected to be insulted. As a believer, as a Christ follower,
that's
right?
not the case.
Right, and so that's kind of like what you're approaching it from a different angle. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Only the implication, right? If one believes Jesus is advocating for complete pacifism, no response to violence, but just take it, right? Or the other view is, right, understand that you're a human being, you need to stand up, right? So the implication is what do you do when it regards to self-defense?
Mhm.
And then, of course, the big question, as unfortunately we've been seeing around the country, even in ours, is what happens when someone comes to your church aiming to harm the person, the worshipers there?
Mhm.
Is it the right of Christians there to defend themselves, to disarm, to remove the attacker, or do you just take it?
Mm.
Right. So I think the implication is real, and this is why I think we're discussing this text as in part of the tough text series. How are we to respond to violent individuals who are aiming to do you harm, whether you're a Christian or not?
Yeah.
How do you respond to violent offenders?
Mm. Mm.
And I think one view would say, well, just take it. That's what Christians are supposed to do as our witness.
Mm.
Where other view might be, no, we still have the right to defend ourselves and do what we must to protect the people who are under our care in our building.
Yeah, and I do think there's merit to standing your ground. I can even think of, you remember when Paul was flogged?
Mm.
Yeah.
And at the end, he's like, he gets flogged. He's like, by the way, I'm a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
And then they're all freaking out
Yeah.
because you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the Roman soldiers are like, it said whoever did it fled. And then
Yeah. And
they
it's like, we'll
withdrew.
let you go. We'll let you go. Just go.
Yeah, and so we see an instance of Paul did suffer, and yet he did stand up for himself and defended himself.
Mhm.
He's like, I have the right to be protected as a citizen, right? And so we see the balance of someone who has been suffering, who takes flogging for his faith, and yet still able to stand up for himself and his own rights. And so I do think that speaks perhaps to the ethics that's at play here. Hugh, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, self-defense is it's within the way God's ethic kind of plays out in this world. Self-defense is allowed in Old Testament and in the New Testament. But I just want to highlight this passage specifically in retaliation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no Christians should say, because this verse says Christians should take it, you can't even practice self-defense. Then you're actually practicing a very bad exegesis.
Mhm.
This verse only concerns within the topic of retaliation. If someone already punched you on the face or dishonored you publicly,
Yeah.
then how do you stand up for that injustice? Because you as a Christian have a right to, and you have a calling to do so. But someone comes to your house, try to damage your belongings and hurt your family, that's a different story, different verses that kind of help us. We have a robust theology, doctrines, and a bank of verses for that kind of scenarios.
Yeah, so I think we can say then the reason why this often has become tough for people is it's probably because it's been misapplied. Right? They take it for one thing when really isn't talking about what people thought it's talking about. But as you specifically mentioned, it's talking about retaliating.
Yeah, I think that's why ESV actually properly titles this subtitle retaliation, not self-defense, not violence in God's kingdom or practicing of force in kingdom of God, but it's retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you go ahead then apply it to the rest of the examples, right? So we have the tunic and the 1 mile, go another mile. So can you take kind of the principle that you mentioned and apply it to the other examples?
Yeah, for the 1 mile one, some scholars suggest the specific word that's being used here is that it's actually when a Roman soldier, they actually have a legal right to ask any citizens to carry their stuff, and that is why actually when a proper Roman execution scene where Roman soldiers making Jesus carry his own cross, Roman soldiers can legally pull anyone from the crowd and say, you carry the cross for him. So it's kind of alluding to that. So if a Roman soldier, your enemy, because for Israelites, these are the enemies. These are foreigners. Just like when Nazi conquered France, for French, them Germans at the time, they're enemies, It's that kind of nuance here. If your enemy asks you, it forces you to go 1 mile carrying their stuff. The way to respond to that, re- retaliate that in God's kingdom, is that actually with generosity, and that's absurd. That's extreme. That's absurd. That's not this worldly, and precisely that's Jesus' point. The way God's truth kind of plays out, gets revealed. This kingdom is a better kingdom than this world is. You actually practice something that is of otherworldly kind of virtues. So an enemy asks you to carry their stuff for 1 mile. Guess what? After that, you offer another mile. In our context, then that would be something like someone that you just hate ask you for a favor. You know what? You actually help them even more. Why? Because that's just a proper posture for those who love Christ. And actually, that's the way my heart grows, my faith grows. And in a way we obey, God actually brings some type of, I don't know, he actually accomplishes the will on earth, the kingdom will on earth. Maybe that person will be converted. Maybe that person will be sanctified. Maybe I'll be, we don't know. But what Jesus is asking of us is to practice generosity in the face of kind of a forced, whether that's circumstantial or by, I don't know, physical kind of violence. If you really want to experience God's miraculous kind of kingdom coming, playing out in this world, is by it's responding to that with generosity, something like that. Yeah.
PJ, did you have anything to add to that?
No, it's just an extreme, even contemporary understanding. It's an extreme way of relating to people, especially those who would view you as their enemy. This is in no way contradicting or negating the other teachings of Jesus, but it's just affirming everything that Jesus taught his disciples to do. Right? If you are the one who has done something wrong and someone were to sue you, right? You just don't give what is owed in that lawsuit, but you give more for the offense that you've committed. Travel an extra mile to those who hate you, right? Responding to evil with good, just displaying greater good for the life that we have in Christ. So in some ways, when we read through the Sermon on the Mount and even just in this passage, we realize just how difficult it can be to live the Christian life, and why we really need Jesus to actually live this life out, where we don't aim to dishonor people who would dishonor us. Even as we see in Proverbs 15, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. It's like, boy, when people say mean things, we just really want to say even meaner things to make us feel better. But God is wise. He knows our hearts. It's just going to be this endless cycle of retaliation, where in the end, it hurts our witness. It destroys relationships. But for us to pull ourselves back to remember what Christ carried for us, and for us to be able to carry our cross, which even means, okay, people are going to dishonor me, people are going to say mean things to me, but there will be justification, right? In the end, there will be retribution. And so I will take it now in this regard, knowing that I'm in a better place with Christ anyway. It's like what I think Spurgeon said, don't fret when people say mean things about you, because you are far more worse than what people are saying about you. And yet Christ saved you. And so if we're cursed, we don't respond in kind. If people dishonor us, we don't respond in kind. But like Jesus, like a lamb to the slaughter, we remain silent by wisdom, in hopes that we can be a right witness, testimony for people to come to a saving faith as we have received.
And I think you guys just entered into the territory of application of this passage. And so, as we wrap this up, can you guys help our listeners take away some day-to-day application of this text, and kind of in addition to what you just said, PJ, kind of summarize, what are we to take away from this? How are we supposed to live this out on a day-to-day?
I'm going to go first because last podcast, PJ set me up for failure by giving such a wonderful application and said, "You can do better." And I clearly just. So I'm gonna go first.
Well, I thought your application was good in the last episode.
Okay, thank you. Or else he's gonna backhand slap me later. Saying that's the best you got.
Turn the other cheek.
Yeah. I guess two things. One thing with a sub. I don't, okay, whatever. I was keep saying. Sorry, friends. I'm lost in my own thought. How do I? I'll start from here. Oh gosh, I'm just digging my own. I'm just getting lost.
The laughing in the crowd isn't helping.
We're still here. We're still here.
Okay, you might think this is not connecting, but let me just start from this. My CG, we're going through First Thessalonians. We're towards the end. By the way, my CG is not for new Christians and non-Christians anymore. It's for everyone. There's a rumor going around that nobody wants to join my CG because they think if I join Hwihu's CG, that means I'm not a Christian. That's not what's going on. That was for last year. But anywho, we're going through First Thessalonians. And in chapter 5, Apostle Paul gives this series of quick kind of like quick rounds, I don't know, Christian application at the end. And if you know, First Thessalonians is the very first New Testament book ever written after about 15 years, 20 something years after Jesus' time. So this is first generation Christians already living out kingdom ethics. And we can see here, if I just read you guys a few, 1-2 verses from the way Apostle Paul closes his letter. Here he says, and we urge you, Christian brothers and sisters, admonish the idle, encourage the faint-hearted, help the weak, be patient with them all, see that no one repays anyone evil for evil, but always seek to do good to one another and to everyone, and rejoice always, and so on and so forth. So starting from the beginning of church history, we begin to see how this kingdom ethic plays out. Within the believing community and at your workplace, don't retaliate evil for evil. If someone gossip about you, don't gossip back. That's not how we live this out. If someone gossips about you, you actually, secretly compliment them. See, you do good for everyone. That's, I think, how Apostle Paul, that's the trajectory Apostle Paul, understanding Jesus' teaching, kind of sets for future Christians. If anybody do something evil against you, now what you do is you flip that either with generosity, compliment, loving heart, like you name it. But I think that will be a good application for our listeners. If you're really struggling, your heart is like hurting so much because that one person is gossiping about you. I think maybe these words, the way Jesus speaks to you, is that I know it's gonna be hard, but you gotta compliment them. Like you gotta, because oftentimes that's how Jesus softens your heart. Or if someone is actually doing great amount of evil by lying to you. What you do is you actually stand up for that injustice, prevent from the community being damaged by sin, but you have to do it in a winsome and a just and a righteous way. And what does that mean? That means you have to be creative, think about it, talk to other friends or pastors, meaning we just can't be idle anymore. This kind of kingdom ethics drives Christians to do certain things. And that's actually the way kingdom grows. So I guess that would be an application. Just think about that one thing that's actually aching your heart, specifically that one evil that's being done against you. And think of a creative way, Jesus-like way to retaliate in a way that's fitting for those who love Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Paul said in Romans, and these ideas we've mentioned, but this is what it says in chapter 12, verse 17. Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And so here I think Paul lays out clearly of how we're supposed to relate as followers of Jesus Christ. and understand that we are going to be cursed, and regardless of how people speak about us or treat us, we are still called, as Jesus called us to do, love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. This never changes. It doesn't change for Christians in America. It's still the same for Christians in Iran and Nigeria. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that we stay silent in light of injustice. We must know the reality of being persecuted as followers of Christ, but we should also speak up for those who are being murdered for their faith, seeking for their protection and justice, because we are all human beings. But the amazing thing that we see throughout church history is while certain ideologies and religion, like Islam, was spread through warfare and killing others, we see that Christianity really did spread through the blood of martyrs. Those who decided to be witness for Christ, not retaliating with violence and warfare, but be willing to sacrifice their own lives like a lamb to a slaughter. And we've seen the world change through that lifestyle, through that attitude. And so I think Christians around the world, especially in countries like Iran and Nigeria, can teach Christians here in America. They are still able to preach. They're still able to worship, praying for their persecutors, even in anger and weeping, hoping that their persecutors can come to the faith. Then us here in America, for people who post things about us either on social media or say things to our face, although that rarely happens these days, we should still weep and pray for these people too, in hopes that they will also come to the faith and receive that gift of salvation that Jesus gives to us.
Thank you.
Yep.
One thing that I did want to add, at least from my end, is I don't want people to get the impression that when wrongs are done to us, that there's no room for confrontation, right? I think this is more talking about the heart attitude of when we are wronged, can we still love someone, right? And that love does entail the edification of that other person, which entails correction, rebuke, reproof, and all of these things. And so when you are wronged, and you will be wronged in this lifetime many times, is your heart posture automatically going to be, let's pay back what has been given to me? Or is there the spirit working in your heart that expresses itself in ways that you want to build the other person up, whether by doing them more good, right? Going the extra mile. But I think oftentimes that also does entail the peacemaking aspect does entail confrontation and the necessary things that we need to say to people so that they know, brother or sister, you are in the wrong. I forgive you in Christ, but you also have to change your way, right? And so just from, I think a day-to-day relational perspective, I don't want people to get the impression that there's no room for confrontation, right? We are always just to do good and add more good to, like good as in like more money, more miles, that's the heart of it, right? But there is room for healthy and godly confrontation and correction and rebuke when wrongs are done to you.
Dang, preach, Reverend.
I'm just,
just a host.
My 2 cents here.
Yeah. Hugh, you and I are going to have a conversation after this episode.
So, not to get backhanded slapped by PJ, I'm going to ask something nice. But yeah, no, it's going to be hard, but the one who tells us to do this is Jesus, who knows what it's like. This is not a type of king or a commander saying, go do it so that I don't have to do it. And we are resentful saying, like, you don't even know what it's like. No, Jesus knows. He did it. And he asking us to do likewise. And the Spirit empowers us to do so. So, yep.
Amen. All right. Thank you, guys. As we come to the end of this episode of Living Stones, we hope that you found our discussion helpful in understanding this text of eye for an eye or turn the other cheek. If you found value in today's episode, we encourage you to share it with others. Remember that you are not alone in this journey. We are members of God's household, united by our shared faith in the Lord and the desire to grow together. So until next time, may God's grace and peace be with you all. Thank you for being a part of Living Stones.